evening and welcome to the February 22nd, 2023 Finance Committee meeting. Committee members present, myself, Councilor Di Natale, Councilors Zarella, Cruz, Boschman, and Van Hazinga. Auditor Brooks is recording. Please be advised that FATV is conducting an audio and video recording of this meeting for public broadcast. I ask that anyone else in the audience who is recording this meeting to please identify themselves for the record now by standing and stating their name and address. Seeing none, at this time I ask that all electronic devices be placed into silent mode. The public has been advised to contact the City Clerk's office regarding any comments of no more than 2 minutes. There have been no comments submitted in preparation of this meeting through Zoom to the clerk, and there's no Zoom requests to be heard. I invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on any matter before us this evening, unless you're a department head specific to an item on here, to please approach the podium, identify yourself by name and address, and identify the agenda item on which you would like to speak for 2 minutes. Seeing none, we'll move on to the agenda, and councilors will take up the first 3 items together, as they all pertain to the contract agreement within the Department of Public Works. The first order is 4123. Order that there be and hereby is appropriated the sum of $453,300 to be charged against available funds and credit to the following accounts. I will not name all the accounts or read all the numbers. That is for the Department of Public Works, Highway, Cemetery, and Parks divisions. And then we have 4223 is an order for $211,400 to be charged against the Water Enterprise Fund retained earnings and credited to Water Personal Services and Overtime. That's for the Water Division of DPW. And 4323 is an order for $100,200 to be charged against the Wastewater Enterprise Fund retained earnings, also as part of the wastewater division. So each order is for separate divisions of the DPW. And the letter here from Mayor Di Natale states in short that this is a new 3-year contract with the Local 170 Teamsters. This contract covers the period of July 1st, 2022 through June 30th of 2025. And we have here this evening Ms. Davis from HR and Commissioner Erickson. Is there anything you folks would like to add before we open it up?
Yep, thank you. Councilors, we are very much, very proud of this contract, honestly. We put a great deal of work and hours into this along with the union, and this is going to give us a great opportunity to attract and to retain all of the employees within the DPW. For quite some time, the rates have been low for many of these positions. If you had the opportunity to look at the matrix that was with this, we've added 6 grades to this. There were 6 grades in there, so now there are a total of 12 different positions. It doesn't mean that we're adding all kinds of positions. What we've done is to give employees the opportunity to move up, and maybe they don't have all of the licensure for one particular position, but maybe they have one. Well, that's a value add for the city. So again, we did create those 6 grades for everyone, and this has definitely put us in a very competitive place with other communities that we compete with. So, yeah, very proud of it. Well deserved.
And I'd like to echo what Ms. Davis said. We've struggled in the past to attract employees to the city because of the relatively low wages, particularly those positions that require hoisting licenses, CDL licenses, drinking water licenses, collections licenses, et cetera. So this contract puts us in a much better position to attract those employees and retain the good employees that we do have that have worked really hard for the city for a long time, have stuck it out, dealt with the low wages, and have shown their dedication to the city. So I'm very happy to put this before you tonight for a vote. I think it'll go a long way to making sure that we are able to fully staff our DPW, particularly the water division, which we've had an incredibly difficult time finding employees to fill the vacant positions there. And additionally, a lot of the new guys that have come on board in the last 4 or 5 years or so haven't come on board with the licenses that we need, so that they don't have the CDLs, they don't have the hoisting licenses. And we're happy to train those guys that do come on without those licenses. But that's a huge investment, particularly now because the state of Massachusetts has changed their CDL license requirements, and they require guys to go to a training class. So we're happy to train these folks, but if we can attract employees that have those licenses already, that improves the city's bottom line. It saves money on having to train these employees to get them to where we need to be. So the goal here is to keep the employees that we do have, make sure that they get trained properly, but also to attract top talent from other cities and towns, from the private sector, et cetera. Because the city really is a great place to work, and we want people to be happy here. We want people to be proud to work for the city, and we want people to work their whole careers here if we can get them to. So with that, yield the floor.
So I'll start. The grades have been doubled. Now, why is that important for the public certification? It allows for more advancement opportunities.
Yes, and also, I'm sorry, did I?
No, go ahead. Yep.
Also, again, if somebody, for instance, for a heavy special motor equipment operator in the streets division, you need a CDL, a CDLB, and a hoisting license. Well, maybe you only have the CDL. Well, we can't pay you as a heavy. You don't have all of the licensure. Or conversely, if you only have the hoisting license, again, we can't pay you at the higher rate. So it gives people the opportunity, because we have a number of employees that are in that kind of situation.
Flexibility. Flexibility.
Yep. Additionally, some of the other positions, in particular in the water department, as well as the sewer collection, which is actually part of the wastewater group, those licenses take longer to get. And it's not just the license. It is, they have to be an operator in training for a certain amount of time for each level. So some of those positions need to be paid a bit higher, because we cannot get anybody to fill those positions. Again, we're competing certainly with the private sector, with other municipalities, and so they have different requirements.
And so in addition to the grade increases, another big change of this, from what I understand, is the CDL training reimbursement or funding. We will be chipping away at that now. We will be offering to pay for the licensures or the training necessary to obtain those licenses.
Right. So we've offered to train employees in the past. If someone comes in without licenses, we're willing to train them to get those licenses. The state of Massachusetts just this past summer changed their requirements for CDLs specifically, requiring that classroom time ahead of actually getting a license. Just like with a normal Class D driver's license, you have to go to driving school, then you have to do the driving time, then you take the test, and you get your license. So you have to do that now for a CDL, whereas in the past you could just get your permit and take the test. You didn't necessarily have to pay for the training course. So because the state has mandated that people have to take that training course, it puts an undue burden on new employees. So say you're just starting out, just graduated high school, you want to come work for the DPW, you're making $20 an hour. For us to expect that type of employee in that situation to front $5,000 to $6,000 for a training class to get the licenses that we're telling them they need to have is an undue burden on that individual. And it's going to really hamper our ability to hire and attract new employees. So as part of this contract, we've agreed to make sure that we'll cover the costs for that training, that $5,000 to $6,000 per employee to get their CDL-B driver's license.
And prior to this contract, we were not offering that.
Prior to this contract, there was no need because the state didn't require it.
But even though there was no need, that still didn't help us.
Right,
That we were
exactly.
not offering it to begin with.
Not for CDL training. We were offering to assist employees with getting their hoisting licenses, distribution system licenses, collections licenses, treatment licenses, et cetera.
But isn't CDL like the big one that's been causing a lot of problems?
It is,
So, yeah.
it is, because any construction activity that we do in the city, whether it's water, sewer, drain, parks, cemetery, you need a truck, typically a dump truck that requires a CDL. You need to be able to operate a backhoe, get a backhoe out there, so that requires a hoisting license. So those are the two most valuable in the city that pretty much all of our guys need to have. And whether it's, cemeteries, parks, streets, or water division, or wastewater division, it's important to have as many people with those two licenses as possible.
My other question is, I must be missing it somewhere in the contract, but what is the base salary increases? Or is it just the grade changes? Like for the police and the fire, we saw 222.
Yep.
What is this one?
This is 012.
012.
The reason why it is that and not any with the 2.5s is because in addition to raising or adding those grades, we have done an enormous amount of rearranging and readjustment of those of the matrix.
So are there going to be several employees within DPW that are going to be reclassified at higher rates with the new grades? All of them will.
The
Okay.
employees, everyone will get an increase based upon their position now.
Because of the new matrix.
Because of the new matrix.
Okay.
And again, and so due to what we're putting into that, that's why we were able to negotiate that was 012. And we obviously want to make sure going forward that we keep those COLAs up, because if not, this group, like any other, but in particular this group, is going to fall behind again. And it took, they've had a lot of years where they either did, like other groups, took zeros, and their rates have been low. So we've been trying to get those rates up. And with this particular contract, again, we really put a lot of work into this to get us competitive.
So unlike the police and the fire, just so everybody's understanding of this, they're not taking an increase. The matrix itself is being completely reorganized.
Yes.
Where they're all higher rates.
Yes.
So for the first year, and then they'll get their incremental after that.
Correct.
But the starting number is bigger as it is because of I call it a reorganization. I know it's not a reorganization, but everybody's reclassified at a higher rate, which is long overdue. So obviously I support the contract. I support the water and wastewater. It's not, I've read through the provisions, and I feel like we're getting smarter with this, even though in some cases we may be late to the game, because for several years that I've been here, employee retention has been a big issue. I've tried to distinguish to the taxpayers that when it comes to public works, it's not a lack of budgetary assistance, it's lack of finding people. We saw it with the Parks Department with the temporary help. No one wanted to take the job for $16.25 an hour. We see, Mr. DeLine's division where, even if he hires some guys, they're there for a few months and then they leave because they find out that the next town over is paying $5 or $6 more an hour. I mean, this is about market competitiveness, and people have to understand that just because this is the public sector doesn't mean it's devoid of market rate forces. It's the same thing. We're going to lose guys to the private sector. We're going to lose guys to the public sector. So this is long overdue with this reclassification. During the hard times, all these guys took major hits that were here 10, 15 years ago. I remember it well. I voted against the contracts because we couldn't even keep lights on. All right, but they all took hits, and this is long overdue in terms of getting us up to an area of competitiveness. Anytime there is an opportunity to stay with the market or ahead of the market, I will support it, because it does not help the taxpayers if we don't have a fully staffed workforce. Mr. Erickson has come before us many times and said he doesn't have enough people or he doesn't have the bodies. And I always say to him, let's be clear here. It's not because you're not getting the money for the people. No one wants the job because we're not competitive. So let's get us to competitiveness, please. And this is long overdue. I'm happy to see this, and I want to keep this going now. We got to analyze. I know you will. Every year, every 2 years, analyze where everybody else is, because we certainly don't want to lose people to a neighboring city or town or to the private sector. So the training aspect is critical. The reclass aspect is critical. And, everyone thinks of public safety as the number, the sacred cows, the number one and number two, fire and police, interchangeable. For me as a counselor, no disrespect to the chief or Chief Suarez, for me as a counselor, 98% of the calls I get involve these guys. And they make me look good. I mean, Gary Withington, I should have him holding my lawn sign. Not that he's supporting me or anything, but my point is that I look good because these guys get the job done when we ask them to do something, because we serve as a conduit between the residents and local government. We cut through the red tape. We go right to Mr. Erickson, we go right to Mr. Withington, or Mr. McNamara, Mr. DeLont. We go right to the source, and they've got enough on their plate without having to hear us gripe all the time. But the residents come to us for help, and it's 98% of the time it's public works matters, at least for me. And so, and I never have a problem with these guys getting requests filled in a timely fashion. Potholes, berms, although berms are, if you're doing pothole, I learned this. You're doing potholes, you can't do berms, but these guys are unsung heroes to me, because a lot, especially the water and wastewater groups, and I was ignorant of this too before I became a counselor. I'm sorry if I'm bloviating here, but, a lot of people think that it starts and ends with flushing the toilet and it's out of sight, out of mind. They have no idea where that water goes, that waste goes, what the process is, who's at the plant doing all the work. They're not seen, Police and fire are always seen. These guys aren't seen. Water, same thing. We have some of the top-notch quality water in this state, in the region, New England, I would say. Very high-quality water. That is at a premium. So we need to make sure that our water division is fully staffed, because people don't think of their water until it looks brown, or it's discolored, or it doesn't taste right or something. So it's something we all take for granted, including myself. So I will say in closing that I will support this contract wholeheartedly, and the next two after it. We need to staff these departments by being competitive. It only serves to help the taxpayers in the end. What we're doing currently is not working. So I'm glad we're getting with the reality of the situation.
One real quick thing.
Yes.
Just the water department, there are eight open positions.
Right.
And it is directly a result of the current contract, not the new one.
And it would be nice, as a personal one request I have. I know budget season's coming up very soon. Is if we can get a status of the staffing, maybe quarterly, to this committee, because now that we're going to implement this contract, our expectation is in a few months we're going to see some positions fill up, and we're going to see the retention. Certainly, I hope in the water division. I would hate to have John come before us in July and say, I didn't have 8 guys 6 months ago, and I still don't have 8 guys. Well, that's not a market problem. What's going on? So it'd be nice to get a status update so we see dividends paid off for what we're committing to. Because it's all about keeping a fully staffed workforce.
I can certainly do that. Happy to provide quarterly updates.
And thank you, gentlemen in the audience, and relay it to everybody, not just the guys on the streets, but, the guys in the office, the engineers. Thank you all for what you do. It doesn't go unappreciated by me, certainly. I'm sure the rest of us. When we ask for your help, there is no complaining. You do it timely. Like I said, you make us look good. I'd be nowhere without you guys. That's just a fact. So thank you for what you all do. It's well-deserved, this contract. It's long overdue, and I will certainly support it. I have Counselor Zarella first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd just like to echo the comments of the chair. Thank you, all of you, for the work that you do. Thank you to the two city officials we have here and the union for negotiating, working so hard to get us a good competitive contract. And yeah, I mean, you guys, people take for granted a lot of the things. I know you guys always have to hear about my pothole isn't filled yet, or my, why isn't this street being repaved? I don't think anyone in the city realizes how many conveniences of life that they experience every day are because of what you are already doing. They only see the, whatever, probably 5% of things that you can't quite get to, not the 95% of things that are running smoothly because you guys are working your butts off out there. So it is very much appreciated. The one question I did have, and I don't want to put you on the spot, Ms. Davis, I know this might not be a statistic you have calculated, but since a lot of the increases are coming through the reclassification in the matrix rather than through percent increases, do you have an estimate of what the sort of equivalent percent would be if we take into account the matrix changes?
So some of those positions range from 5 to 6% of an increase up to like 35%, 35 to 40%. And those would be the position, the higher the percentages are the positions that we have difficulty filling because of the licensure, because of the time it takes to get those. And so those would be the highest percentages based on our market research.
Yeah, that makes sense. And honestly, it surprises me a little, but in a good way. Looking at the numbers we've got here on our agenda, if those represent up to a 30-some-odd% increase, then first of all, yeah, we were apparently quite low before. And second of all, I feel like we're really getting bang for our buck in this contract. If these are the numbers for our current increase, and that reflects our actual employees seeing a 5 to 30% increase in their actual pay, that's a bargain. So I'm very pleased with this, and I would very much hope that we will see a unanimous passage both on this committee and in the full council. I yield the floor.
Council Boschman.
A couple of questions on the contract. My first question is on page 1. I get a question. It says here that if an employee works from 3 p.m. to 7 a.m., he gets an additional $2. Is that for a shift differential per hour?
Yes, that's the shift differential, and that's typically if we have someone working an overnight shift, like we do with street sweeping. So I believe what was the former shift differential?
75 cents.
75 cents. So to encourage guys to work that overnight shift, which can be stressful, it can be difficult. We've had guys that get shot at while they're operating sweepers. It's deserving of at least $2 an hour for the shift differential. A lot of others in cities and towns do as high as a $10 shift differential. So I think an increase from 75 cents to $2 is not unreasonable by any means.
Yeah. No, I also read in here that any new employee started, I believe it says in here, January, any new employee no longer is going to be on the civil service list. Is that the way I'm reading that right? Mm-hmm. So are we doing away with the civil service and the DPW?
So anybody that is currently in the civil service will be grandfathered in. But keeping in mind, this is labor service. labor service under civil service is not the same as a permanent civil service employee, like a policeman, a firefighter. Some of the positions, even some of the clerical positions, we still have, I think, 3 people that went and took a civil service test to be able to work for the city. They've gotten rid of all of that. There really isn't an advantage for the employees, really, to have that labor service designation. And the reason for that is because mainly the labor service addresses seniority and as people apply for a position. So that really is the only advantage. It would be if 2 employees that were covered by labor service, one of them started after the other, that would dictate who should get that job. But the contract already covers seniority. So there really isn't, yeah. So anybody that are, again, that's already here will get grandfathered in. It's going forward.
Okay, I understand that part. Early call-ins and stay-over call-ins, we're going to guarantee them 4 hours of OT on an early call-in. Is that double time, or is that going to be strictly time and a half on an early call-in and time and a half on a after 3?
It'll be time and a half. So if the call-in happens after 2:30 or before, I think it was before 6:30, it'll be the time and a half, the overtime rate.
Okay. Now, my other question is time and a half. If an employee comes in at 11 o'clock in the morning, his shift ends at 3, and you ask that employee to stay to 8, they say 7, whatever, 7, 4 hours after. Does he get paid time and a half for that, or does he work his basic 8-hour shift? If he comes in at 11, he usually punches out at 3, but there's work to 7. Will he get paid time and a half for the 4 hours, or does he get his straight time because he didn't put in 8 hours prior to the day?
I guess my question would be, if he's starting at 11, why is he starting at 11?
Say he had a doctor's appointment.
So in that case, he'd be using vacation time for that period from 7 a.m. when he's typically starting to 11. So he'd be expected to work from 11 to 3, and that would be straight time just because it's normal working hours. If we asked him to work past 3, it would be time and a half because he's getting docked to the vacation time for between 7 and 11, and then he's working his regular shift, and then you're asking him to work outside of normal hours. I think I answered the question.
Let's assume that he doesn't want to take any vacation time, or he doesn't even want to take any sick time, that he just wants to he's going to come in late because he's got something planned, but he's coming in at 11 o'clock. And his shift ends at 3. But all of a sudden there's an emergency and you need somebody to work, so he says, hey, I'll work to make up my 4 hours.
That doesn't happen. We don't allow employees to do that. If you're not there during normal working hours, you have to use vacation time, sick time, or have a doctor's note. If you don't, that's an issue, and that's something that we have to address with discipline.
Oh, okay, all right.
And that would be,
Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to get you guys in problems.
even though overtime occurs after 8 hours in a day or 40 hours in a week.
Right.
However, in that, we don't have regular work that would occur after 3 o'clock. So that would kick into some other scenario in the contract that would be, either overtime for, snow or whatever, something that would, because they don't schedule anything typically past 3 o'clock. So that would kick something else in, some other provision in the contract that more than likely is going to get them overtime.
Okay.
They're required to work 7 to 3. So if they have to come in late for a doctor's appointment, they're going to use personal vacation time. They're required to do that, but that's considered time work. So if they come to 3 o'clock and there's a snowstorm going on, if they work additional time, they've worked their 8 hours, even though someone was vacation or personal, it's still considered time work. So of course they're going to be paid overtime for that additional time. So
I understand.
yeah, Shift differential would be a different thing if they came in later to work a different shift or something, that's a whole different story, but they're required to report 7 to 3. So.
Okay. Can I ask you, on page 5 of the contract, what's the secondary? You get the guy making from 250 to 350 for a pager, and then you say a secondary pager.
So we have 2 guys on call typically within each of the divisions. One is the primary pager. That's the guy who someone calls first. So whether it's the answering service or me or Gary, we call the primary pager first, and that's the guy that responds first. Typically, if that person doesn't pick up for whatever reason, the secondary is a backup. A lot of times when a primary gets called in, he calls in the secondary based on the severity of the situation. So if it's something simple that just one person can address, the primary pager will get the call, go in and address the issue, and problem solved. If he feels like he needs help, he calls the secondary pager, and that secondary person comes in to assist.
If I could speak for the water side too, just to add, the primary pager is usually as Nick said, receives the call, but they're typically in the water situation. They're diagnosing what the problem is, whether they have to come in, they speak to the customer. If it's a pipe that came apart in the house, did they shut it off? Can they wait till tomorrow for us to come out? So there's some additional work involved by the primary person. Now, if that homeowner says, "Hey, I need you to come out tonight. My ball valve in the basement won't hold. I got to get the water shut off outside," then they'd more likely call the secondary, the primary would have the secondary pager person come in as well with them to actually do the work. But the primary one, he's paid a little bit more because he has to deal with, customers directly, and basically diagnose that. Sometimes he'll get woken up at 2 that person will get woken up at 2 in the morning. And the homeowner says, "Yeah, no, I can wait till tomorrow." It happens more often than you think. I feel bad for the person because you just get woken up at 2 in the morning and has to talk to a customer. It takes a while to get back to sleep. So that's the reason for paying that person a bit more than the secondary one.
And I guess this would be my final question, and this would be on page 6 of the contract. I notice you talked about glasses and replacement of glasses, but never once have I read in your contracts that you would buy the employees, if they were reading glasses, safety glasses, so they can actually use them on the field. Like, these are safety glasses. I wear them all the time because sometimes I cut my lawns and I'm too lazy to go run in the house to get them, so I wear these all the time. Everywhere I go, I wear them. So they're safety glasses. And I noticed that you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably 6 or 7 people, and there may be more, that they all get glasses, but I don't know if they get safety glasses as regular glasses. Do we supply that? And if we don't, why don't we?
We do supply safety glasses. We don't supply prescription safety glasses. What's that?
No.
Yeah, we don't supply prescription safety glasses. So the expectation is that if an employee wants prescription safety glasses, they got to buy them. But if they break them on the job because of the job, then we'll reimburse the person for that pair.
Okay. All right. I don't kind of like that, but I'm not going to change the contract.
Well,
But
it's an idea for the next negotiation.
Yeah, we have, in the water department, I think maybe one set of glasses every 5 years or something. It really doesn't come into play that much, so.
Yeah, that's the only reason, Dave, because I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm very sticky about PPE and safety. I think I told Nick that before, and I told Sue Davis, because you can't replace an eye. If you lose an eye, it's not coming back. You lose a finger, your finger's not coming back. So if I seem kind of crabby, I know what safety glasses does, because when I worked at right over here, a piece of metal hit me in the eye and it broke the safety glasses and they saved my eye. So really, safety glasses, it's well worth it. It's only for your protection. So if I call up the boss, because I even told Gary that you guys ain't wearing them, I do tell Nick. I say, hey, well, why not? I'm only worried about your eyesight. No, I don't want, you want to see your kids. You don't want to see a patch of your eye. They want to see you. So safety glasses are very important on a job, I think, very important. And I'll accept this contract. I get no problem with the contract. I just wanted to ask some of the questions. Keep up the good work. Remember, Ward 2 is very important. That's all I got to say.
Counselor Van Hazinga?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My fellow councilors covered most everything, so I'll keep it real quick. I'm happy to see this contract. I'm glad to see we're becoming more competitive because we need to fill these positions, because there's a lot of good work to be done in the city. Just on the topic of overtime and off-shift work, how much snow are we expecting tonight?
I've seen varying reports. I'm expecting 3 to 5 inches well into the early hours of the morning before it transitions over to snow, to ice and freezing rain. So hopefully I'm wrong and it's a lot less than that.
All right, thank you very much.
Counselor Cruz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I also won't get too into it, but I do want to echo the sentiments that DPW is the unsung hero here in Fitchburg. Doesn't get enough credit, and you're understaffed constantly, all divisions, and I'm grateful to see that we're going to go up, and I'm grateful for Councilor Zarella for asking the percentage question, because the fact that we're going up 30% in some cases, and these are the numbers we have, is kind of staggering. It should have been done a while ago. I do want to ask a question. The $200 extra for working 16 consecutive hours, snow and ice provision, how often does that happen?
During snow and ice removal, quite often. The past few years, we've been fortunate. We haven't had any really, really bad winters since, I'd say, 2015 or so. But if we do have an extended duration storm, it is what it is, and the guys have to work, and we have to continue our operations. So it does happen occasionally, and I think we try to take a proactive effort to rotate guys out throughout the duration of a long storm like that. But our bench is only so deep, so sometimes it happens.
Right, and it's, I mean, $200 for working 16 hours straight, it's a pretty good deal. I think it's the least we can do. And I know that if we can staff better, then we can do that stuff less. So it's better for the city of Fitchburg to have properly staffed departments that we don't have to offer incentives like that and those sort of things. And your health and safety of the department is in much better shape too if they're not working 16, 20 hours straight. Nobody should have to do that, but we're grateful for you that you're willing to do it. I'm grateful that we have provisions like that in the contract, and yeah, thank you for all that you do. I'm happy to see this get rectified today. I yield the floor.
Some of the toughest roads around the plow. You look at some of these steep roadways and the turns on them, and these guys do a heck of a job that you don't see accidents, very frequently. So I got to give them credit. I plowed myself when I was a public works director in Winchendon, and the roads up there do not even compare to some of the hills here that they have to deal with. It's difficult.
Right. I don't think people in the city realize we have streets in the city. I was talking with Commissioner Erickson that wouldn't be allowed to be made today because they don't meet the regulations of the Department of Transportation. Streets like South Street that are too steep that you guys have to deal with. So thank you for all that you do.
And we have a parking ban tonight, just as an unannounced announcement.
We do, starting in an hour and 12 minutes, roughly.
8 to 6,
Yep.
8 tonight till 6 tomorrow afternoon.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Councilor Zarella, you had one more thing?
Yes, thank you. Well, I did just have a quick question, but I also just want to remark that, because I think that's a really good point that I hadn't really keyed in on when I was going through it. But yeah, I remember when I met with some of you guys, I think it was last summer, we talked about some of the plowing conditions, and yeah, 16 to 20 hours on these roads. I admit, before I talked to you guys last summer, I hadn't really considered everything that went into that, but that's really something else. And the fact that we aren't seeing, reports of, city plow goes off-road or whatever every winter is not just a testament to your diligence, but also to your skill. That's another thing that I think people just don't think about. They figure, why can't I get paid to just drive a truck around? That's kind of like if someone asked me, why can't I get paid to just sit at a computer and type? It's a very reductive conception of what you actually do. And yeah, I'm glad that we're fairly compensating you guys or taking a big step towards giving you a more competitive pay grade. Because like I said last night, when things get tough, you guys always have our backs. So I hope the city will always have yours. The one question I did have regarding the civil service provision, I understand the reasoning for the move. It was well explained. I'm just curious, and I know the solicitor isn't here, but do you know if there's anything in our ordinances that we need to update to reflect the move away from civil service?
Funny that you should ask that. Yes, you're going to be seeing something.
Okay.
Because when you change civil service, you have to take it out the same way you put it in. And DPW, along with the Board of Health, but that was done like in 1986 or something, it's got to come out. And we're going to need to do it through, yeah.
Excellent. Just wanted to check on that because in
That's a
case
good
it
question.
wasn't being looked at.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
You know, the DPW did a great job last year sticking with all the potholes, because a lot of the complaints I got from residents last summer was the roads are too bumpy. Not that it goes from too many potholes in April to it's too bumpy. I said, well, we're doing our jobs filling the holes then, because, if there are no potholes, then we got to talk about how bumpy they are.
Yeah.
Councilor Boschman.
I have one question for the city auditor. My question is, that $453,300 is coming out of free cash? It is coming out of free cash.
The highway, parks, and cemetery are coming out of free cash. The water and wastewater is coming out of their own
I
internal
saw that.
budgets.
Okay. All right. I make a motion we accept.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept 41, 42, and 4323. If there are no objections, I'll take this under unanimous consent. Seeing none, they are favorably recommended to the council.
Thank you, Councilors.
Thank you.
Good luck to you guys. Thank you very much. And Happy New Year.
Now, everybody go home and go to bed. Early, right?
We have to sign this. We changed the rule last night. Hey, Anthony, do we have to sign these?
Nope.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. We changed the rule last night. No more signatures.
I mean, the chairman probably should, just for formality's
Okay,
sake.
you want me to
but-
sign it? Okay, yeah, I can.
But we don't have to pass it around anymore.
Okay.
You technically don't have to. It's just
Okay.
probably a good idea to
Okay,
have someone's
yeah, all right.
signature on it.
So we passed the rule change last night, so we don't have to do this anymore, sign it. Because of the video evidence and the meeting minutes. But I'll sign it.
I appreciate it.
Being the accountant that I am, too. Everything. Anyway. All right, so moving on to 4423. In order, approve the expenditure of funds from the Mass Development Brownfields Site Remediation Grant in the approximate amount of $250,000 for the purpose of said grant, which is to remediate soil contamination at 80 Lunenburg Street. Director of Community Development and Planning, Murphy.
Good evening. Liz Murphy, City of Fitchburg Community Development Department. So this grant is a grant that we applied for before we actually put out 80 Lunenburg Street to an RFP. And as you may remember, we accepted a proposal from WCHR. They're going to build 18 to 20 units of townhouse-style homes for sale on the property. The grant application for remediation was supplied for before all that happened. We received the award after we accepted the bid. We do have to continue to own the property in order to remediate the property, but what we're going to do is we're going to clean up with the $250,000, not spend a penny more, and then transfer the property to WCHR so that they can do their work to build new housing there.
So 80 Lunenburg Street is that's across from the carpet, that's the
Yes.
corner? That
Yep.
empty lot that's been an eyesore
Yeah,
for...
the old Pete's Battery.
Peter Battery.
Yeah.
Pete's Battery.
Right, yeah. With all the overgrowth and the...
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to clean that whole area up, transfer it over to someone's interested in buying the lot.
Yep.
And the plan right now is for them to build 18 to 20 housing units?
Correct.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Finally taking away that eyesore area of the that-
long overdue.
I want to say it's been there at least 25 years. I mean, I don't recall it ever something ever being there.
Oh, yeah, Peter's Battery.
I'm 40, but I mean,
Peter's Battery was there.
how long ago?
Oh, God.
I want to say we demolished it around 15 years ago. I
Yeah,
think
it's been a
it
long
may
time.
have been,
I feel like it's been longer than that, but,
it may be, but it took a long time to.
no, that's great. So that's going to complement the Moran Square and the downtown area nicely with housing need.
Yes.
It's within walking distance, so, but it's just another blighted area that's been there for probably 2 decades that I'm glad to see there's going to be some development there, so that's great. Council Boschman.
Got one question for you. When we voted on that company to come in and buy that, I thought I read in there that they were going to get rid of the fill that was contaminated. That's what I thought, because they said they were taking truckloads out.
That was their proposal. Like I said, their proposal came in before we actually got the grant award. So once we got the grant award, we had a choice. We could turn the grant away and just hand over the property, or we could make it a little easier for WCHR to come in and jump right into their development work.
My question to you as a city planner is these areas that are brownfield, why aren't we going after the insurance companies that used to take care of the lots and protected those employees that own these buildings on the hazardous waste? I thought the whole purpose of the brownfields grants was we go after the insurance companies, and whatever they don't pay, they come in and help take the rest out.
That's not my understanding of what brownfield grants do. I haven't heard that before. I can certainly look into it. In this particular case, I don't believe there's anybody to be able to take responsibility for the property and the cleanup. The prior owner, last I knew, was incarcerated.
Oh.
So sometimes these companies, they go under, and there is no company to look to for compensation for the contamination that they caused.
All right, that's my only question.
Councilor Cruz?
I just have a couple questions. When the proposal for the development was proposed, was there feedback from the community and the abutters, that you recall?
Anecdotally, but I don't recall any outcry, any large amount of feedback.
Okay. I'm thrilled to see that the housing going. We have a huge housing crisis across this country and in the state and the city. And just for the edification of people watching, there's no way to transfer this grant for a similar purpose in another area of the city that needs, say,
Correct.
that needs,
It was applied for specifically for this piece of property.
and it can't be moved.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Councilor Zarella?
On that same lines, now, we've talked about this before. I'm not one to squeeze incoming developers for every penny we can get or anything. But if we are giving them really in excess of a $250,000 benefit, because we're also presumably providing labor and so forth, which may be paid for out of that, but I mean, we're providing the skill. Has any consideration been given to asking them for a slight purchase price increase, maybe not of the whole amount, but of something, in recognition of the fact that we are saving them $250,000?
It's a good question. The answer is no. We haven't had that conversation, and I'd have to check with our procurement department to see if that is something that we could do with an RFP. I wouldn't have thought we could do that we could negotiate the price.
That makes sense. And like I said, I mean, I'm in favor of it one way or the other. It's just, kind of as a matter of courtesy and fair dealing, I would have liked to see the company offer us some compensation for this benefit they're receiving. But either way, it works out to the benefit of the city, so.
And I should say, we may have to pass on a site that's mostly cleaned up if the $250,000 isn't enough to remove all of the contaminated soils. They may step in and finish the job, and we've been working with them to make sure that they understand that, and with our consultant, so that we can have a seamless transition with them and not expose.
Right, that makes perfect sense. And just to follow up, again, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but for the benefit of anyone watching, when we do turn it over to them, if we haven't had sufficient funds to completely finish the remediation, they will be required to have their work inspected to make sure it's fully complete, right?
They will have to completely remediate, yes.
Excellent, because I know that when I go out, door knocking tomorrow, if people were watching this, they're going to ask me, what if we do this work and then they kind of do a slipshod job on their end? How are we sure that we're not leaving a contaminated site in the city? And
That's a good question.
Yeah,
And
I'm glad. Like I said, I was 99% certain that was the answer, but before I go tell people that, I want to make sure I've got it officially.
And we've had multiple conversations about their intention to have the site be as clean as possible so that the homeowners could have garden boxes, that they could have their own little vegetable gardens if they want. There may still be some limitations, but any limitation will have a legal activity use limitation recorded. They are trying, it's their hope that they can get to not needing that they could have the site so clean that they don't need that.
Excellent.
But we'll see how it plays out. If they do need it, then they would be looking at keeping that in an area where there's paving. So, because paving will have to happen there too.
That makes sense. Yeah. That makes perfect sense to me, and I'm glad to hear that they're so invested in doing a good job with it. That makes me feel a lot more comfortable about them getting a windfall of $250,000. So I'm in favor. I yield the floor.
Council Van Hazinga?
If I remember correctly, the developer is developing, it's an affordable housing project, right?
Yes, mostly. It's Community Builders Commonwealth Builders is the funding source that they're looking at for these townhouses. And that source, similar to workforce housing, can go as low as 80% area median income for the home buyers and up as high as 120%.
So it's involving public subsidies to make the numbers work for this
It is,
project.
yes.
That's where they're getting the funding from. So
Yeah.
this isn't a project where someone's going to pocket this $250,000. This is something that is really going to help make the project successful and work.
Correct.
So it's not a question of recouping a windfall that this developer is going to get. This is just ensuring that it's more likely to be successful as possible.
Right. And this is WCHR is not a for-profit developer. They are a nonprofit developer.
All right, great. So I think it's great that you were able to get this this grant, even if it comes in after the fact, because these older industrial sites are such a problem. Like Councilor Boschman brought up, it's really hard to trace responsibility for these small sites for owners and companies that are no longer in existence. It's one thing when you have a GE plant that has contamination issues. They're still there. You can get them on the hook to clean stuff up. But a carriage manufacturing warehouse in the 1900s or battery, it's just it's no luck there. So it's great we're able to get this funding, because really this cleans up a prominent site in the city and helps make a project work where people can have affordable places to live. So I think this is great. Thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 4423. There are no objections. It is favorably recommended. Thank you.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Oh,
I know that.
got the CDBG next.
I was trying
I
to
was just going to sit right here.
So here we go for, yes.
Before we begin, I didn't print out the CDBG packet this year because in years past we've had it printed out for us. Do we have any copies of it that can be passed around?
I got one.
Oh, just the basic, not the full.
So
I can get it for you digitally right here if you want.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. Like I said, I try to come prepared,
Okay.
but I just kind of got used to having it passed out in paper copies.
do you want me to, do you have your phone?
I do, but
Oh, okay.
Councilor
Okay.
Cruz is pulling it up for me.
There's a link to it, yeah, okay.
So I apologize for the delay. Go ahead.
So, as in years past, if there are no objections, my suggestion on taking these up is to read the mayor's letter and then to have me read each section one at a time with the projects and their amounts. And then I would open the floor for comments or questions on that specific package, that specific section of the whole package. If any committee members want to take separate votes on each project within that section, we will do that. Otherwise, I will ask for one vote for the whole section to accept, unless the council, just like a committee report, if you're okay with them all and no one objects, we'll just take it all at once. If someone wants to pull one out and vote on that separately, we will do that. So with that said,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
I got a question. Not to be a wise guy. If they call this the mayor's CBG, am I right or wrong? That's what I always heard for the last 8 years.
So, as you probably know, Council, the process is there's an application period.
Right.
And these organizations have so many days or months to apply with the requisite paperwork to be put on a list for consideration. The planning board will then hold a public hearing to go through all of the applications.
Right.
And they will select which projects they believe warrant consideration within the funding. Their recommendation then goes to the mayor.
Right.
The mayor then looks over the planning board's recommendations and goes through his process and submits to the city council what he believes is funding. So I would be confident in saying, yes, this is the mayor's CDBG plan, because without the mayor's approval of the planning board's input, we wouldn't get this. And I know whether it's this mayor or the previous mayor that I served under, that I worked under, it's not unprecedented for a mayor to take the planning board's recommendation and amend the amounts or put their own project in. I've seen mayors change what the planning board recommends. So I would argue, yes, this is the mayor's CDBG spending plan, but I also believe that the mayors, past and present, weigh heavily what the planning board comes up with. They don't deviate much from what they suggest.
Right. Right. And my only question, I'm not trying to cause any trouble, I was saying it. Aren't we really kind of wasting our time to sit here and go through every one? Say if I wanted to cut the Clegon Neighborhood Center, for example, and you all agree that we want to cut the Clegon Neighborhood Center. Mm-hmm. So we submitted to the mayor, but the mayor comes back and says, no, we're not cutting the Clegon Neighborhood Center. We can't do nothing about it.
So the process for CDBG, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Auditor or Ms. Murphy, it's the exact same process as the budget. I believe we have the authority to, we can't add, we can only reduce or remove entirely. And then we send back to the mayor our list of amendments, like we would the budget. And yeah, the mayor legally is not bound to, correct me if I'm wrong again, the mayor can either take our suggestions and revise his proposal with what we're looking for, or some fashion of it, some format, some form of it, or he can send it right back to us and say, no, I'm not doing what you want. But I've rarely seen an instance where the mayors have come back with that kind of defiance because the council can just then not vote for it. It can't be enacted without our approval. So it would behoove the mayor to listen to us and work with us if he were to resubmit what would get the votes. Am I wrong? I mean,
that's basically correct. It's basically an appropriation which requires the mayor's approval to submit to city council, which is what the mayor has done in submitting this budget. He's saying, I approve this budget, and I'm presenting it to city council. City council can make cuts, and if they make cuts, that's pretty much what the mayor then is restricted to spending. With block grant, as we've done with we'll be doing it kind of just ahead of that with the ARPA. The city council passes a budget that the mayor has submitted, and then based on what has been approved by city council, the next meeting there will be money orders for each of the individual appropriations. So city council will have a second bite at the apple, if you will. The mayor could at that point choose to put in his numbers if city council wanted to make a cut. But city council at that point would have a second opportunity to say, no, we're going to stay with these cuts, and that's what it is. Once the council has acted, the mayor can't spend more than what has been approved.
Right, so ultimately, what the point is, like the budget process is, if we give him amendments back, or we reduce the spending, and he doesn't care to entertain, well, he has no choice. He may not like it, but the final decision rests with us in terms of what the cap is. If we cut it $100,000, he can't spend that $100,000 without our approval. So just like the budget, it would behoove him to not leave $100,000 on the table from the feds, but to work with us then to submit to us a plan where we will support that extra $100,000. So I guess, in long story short, Counselor, we do have a say in this process. It doesn't start and end with him or the position. So
I just was wondering,
that's just
because I was always told when you try to make cuts, we tried to make cuts a couple of times when I was on the council, well, I'm still on the council, but we always said it's the mayor's budget, it's the mayor's CBG, and there's really nothing you can do.
Well, I, for one, just speaking for myself, I've never held the opinion that it's the mayor's budget or the mayor's CDBG, because once it gets to our desk, and if we ratify it, it's all of ours. A lot of my colleagues, not saying the ones on this council, but in previous councils would take umbrage with me on that. They'd always say it's the mayor's budget. I said, well, so what are we doing here then? If it's the mayor's budget, let's go home. So it's not the mayor's budget. It's the mayor's budget right now, as it's submitted to us. We get our crack at the apple, bite at the apple, and whatever gets passed, we all own it. It's not just his, it's ours too. I mean, if the council majority vote wishes to cut something, fine. I know it's happened once. It was under the prior administration. I forget the exact item, but I think it had to do with one of the social service agencies for the homeless. The issue that former Councilor Joseph used to have all the time about separation of church and state. Right. We actually did cut that one year. It was a very close vote. And so Mayor Wong at the time came back with a second proposal for just that $10,000. Okay, I'm not going to get the votes for this. Here's my next suggestion, because they're not going to leave $10,000 on the table. So we do have. So is it rare? Yes, but it can happen certainly. So, Councilor Zarella?
Yeah, just to follow up in clarification. Yeah, we can say no to anything on here. The only thing we can't do directly is tell him where to move that money. We can say, I'm just going to use an example that everyone should know is absurd because we know we're not cutting it, but or at least I think so. But I'm looking here at the Twin City Rail Trail connector. You know, that's an ongoing project. Presumably we're going to fund it, but that's $65,000. If we chose to say we're not approving that $65,000, then he can't spend that $65,000. We could say we're not approving that $65,000 because we think it should be spent on this other thing instead. And we can't force him to spend it on that thing. But we can say that's where we think it should be, and that's why we're saying no. And then, as the chair said, it would probably behoove him to take that into account when considering his alternate proposal, because if say, 8 or 9 councilors all voted that way and all said, we think it should be spent on this other thing, I don't want to try to read the mayor's mind, but certainly if it were me sitting in his desk and I got a message like that from the council, I'd think, look, whatever I throw the council, if it's not this thing that they all think it should be spent on, it's probably not going to get approved.
And not to interrupt you, Council, but more so with the federal CDBG, because it's federal grant money, you know, the money, unless we want to give a check to another city or town for 100,000, just the number, we really need to spend all the amount we're getting.
Right.
So he would most certainly come back to us, or else we forfeit the money, which would be insane. Right. I just want to make one clarification. When it comes to the CDBG package, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Murphy, I think there's some stipulations that the feds have with the sections. Is it public services cannot be more than 20%?
Public services cannot be more than 15%.
Yep.
Admin cannot be more than 20%.
Okay, so two of the sections, public services, cannot be more than 15% of the total award, and the administration piece cannot be more than 20%. All other sections don't have any restrictions other than those two. So at a maximum amount, if it's $1 million allotment, 350,000 can go towards public services and administration, but the other 650 cannot, has to go elsewhere. So there's a couple of stipulations, restrictions on how this money can be divvied out.
And before you start, can I ask one question?
Yep.
To her, Ms. Murphy. What happened to that group PAL, the one we gave a couple of $10,000? They were policemen on Broad Street for boxing before the pandemic, and I haven't seen or heard from, I think it was PAL. Huh?
It was ARPA. So they do
It was
have.
ARPA, that wasn't
Yeah.
CDBG.
No, that was PAL. The one, no, it wasn't PAL, it wasn't, I thought it was.
No, it was American Rescue Plan. I remember, it was last
Oh,
year.
it was ARPA?
Yeah, it was ARPA,
All
the
right,
first
sorry.
round.
Sorry, I apologize. Too much on my mind.
Okay, so we'll start with the reading of the letter. So, letter from the mayor dated February 21st of this year. Dear President Zarella, in consideration of the recommendation of the Planning Board and comments by various citizens regarding the Year 49 Community Development Block Grant, I hereby submit to the City Council the following Year 49 CDBG application for your review. Attached, please find Year 49 estimated funding, Year 49 funding requested, and Year 49 funding recommended. The Year 49 consolidated plan must be submitted to the Department of Housing and Urban Development no later than May 15th of 2023 to ensure funds will be available by July 1st. In order to meet the submission deadline for Year 49 CDBG program, comments must be received by the City Council's March 7th, 2023 meeting. Steve DiNatale, Mayor. And the total program estimated funding, and this amount may fluctuate pending budget approval by Congress. Estimated CDBG funds available for Year 49 is $956,587. And Ms. Murphy, the reprogram funds, would that get added on top of that, or is that in
Correct.
addition to the 956?
So, yes, that's in addition to the 956.
So the total would
but
be-
it can't be counted towards those caps.
Okay. So the total then is 988,000, this would be on the third page, or the second page, $988,970.54. So just a shade under $1 million. The summary of the proposals are as follows. I will start with public facilities and improvements. There are 5 projects totaling $294,000. Project A, Parks and Recreation Community Development for $152,000. Project B, project is Twin City Rail Trail Connector, sponsored by the Department of Public Works, $65,000. Project C, project is Abolitionist Park, sponsor Fitchburg DPW, $65,000. Project D, Abolitionist Park Phase 3B, sponsored by the Friends of Fitchburg Abolitionist Park, $5,000. And Project E, Crocker Field Broad Street Entry, sponsored by the City of Fitchburg School Department for $7,000. Are there any questions or comments on the 5 projects listed here under public facilities and improvements?
I have a general question.
Councilor Cruz?
And thank you, Mr. Chair. And this might be a better question for Commissioner Erickson. Regarding that, there's the money from last year was pretty much all spent up. Is that what I'm reading?
I'm sorry.
Last year's money was completely spent?
For
With the exception
for
of...
CDBG?
Yeah.
No, they do have some funding to still spend, but we're just approaching their construction season, so that money will get spent.
Okay, thank you.
Council Boishman?
We are going to do Park Hill, right? Because I don't see nothing. Then
Park Hill? Yep, Park Hill Park has a large chunk of its funding from ARPA. Both the Mama Fitz Park and Park Hill were applied for together for ARPA. This funding in underline A is also meant to cover any cost overruns. We don't know that there are cost overruns, but it's good to have contingency. So this gives us the flexibility to be able to do to fully fund Park Hill Park and Mama Fitz if they do have cost overruns and goes beyond our contingency funds.
Okay.
Motion to accept?
Sorry, Council. I have Council Van Hazen.
Sorry.
So traditionally in this section, we've included some money for sidewalk repairs and accessibility improvements. I think last year we started a sort of a revolving fund similar to what's being proposed for the parks to try and stretch that money as far as possible. Do you have any input on the decision not to include anything this year in that area?
There are some sidewalk funds. Well, there's curb cut funds that are existing, so I guess that is a different question. But I tell you, there was. It doesn't look well. There was the North Street sidewalk was cut, so that was the one project that looked like it was.
There's been a lot of efforts downtown to. Part of it's the accessibility curb cuts. Part of it's the sidewalks that have just reached the end of their life. I was just wondering if there's any. If there's still money left over from last year that's being still worked through, or if there's
there is still a little bit from last year, and I know specifically on the curb cuts, there definitely is. Mm-hmm. I can't speak to the sidewalk piece as much. There are some other funding sources that are funding sidewalks right now too, so it's hard, since I'm not in it every day, to keep all of that straight, but I know there's some Safe Routes to School money and another source that has a similar name funding some sidewalk projects now.
Okay, so I mean, not included here, just as we go forward, as you're looking at those grant programs, I mean, there's a great need. It's a constant complaint I receive as a ward councilor, especially in the downtown area, that a lot of sidewalks are just impassable now, and they really need some help to get straightened out. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Ms. Murphy, who's administering the CDBG program now? Because I know the prior.
Yeah, so it was Cindy Dalton. She left. Right. It's Kim LeBlanc is our CDBG administrator, and she would be here. Unfortunately, she had a death in her family, so she's not able to come today.
I wasn't sure if you filled the position. That was all.
Thankfully, that is one of the positions we filled, yes.
Okay. Any other questions on public facilities and improvements?
Motion to accept?
One question. Go back to
Council Boishman.
What Councilor Andy has said. You as the planning department head now, I don't know if I'm going off topic here. I'll still be talking about sidewalks. Why don't we come up with a plan for all our neighborhoods? Because if you drive around, like he says, Ward 4, Ward 5, Ward 2, terrible. They're unsafe.
Counselor, I will.
Go ahead.
I know I allowed Councilor Van Hazen to bring up the sidewalks, so that's not on the item, but it was in context of it wasn't here this year versus last year. You're now getting into the weeds. Well, you're going now. You're now going through the whole city. Like you're going down the road paving path of why aren't we? What's the plan? I think that's more of an appropriate question for the commissioner as well. But I don't want to get into a whole discussion about the deficit in sidewalks. Okay, the question was asked earlier because it's not here anymore. Is it being covered elsewhere? That was answered. Let's not get into where's the plan. Where's the
Well, no, I mean, Mr. Chair, I would prefer not to see sidewalks on CBG funds, really.
Well, you got your wish this year.
Yeah, I know, but I would rather not see it on that because really it takes away from other programs that we can actually use.
I would argue that sidewalks in our city are just as dire of a need than the streets.
Right. I agree. 100%.
And they're just as costly. I know when we repave Clarendon Street in the spring, It's going to have a full-scale redo of the sidewalks,
Right.
which is why the cost is exorbitant.
1.4 million.
Yeah, so I know that the city has made great gains on the sidewalk, especially downtown. I know there's a lot of complaints still about downtown, but the main strip, that whole two-way conversion, did a lot of curb cutting and a lot of better access for ADA, but we have a long way to go, just like the road paving. So,
It is on our radar.
yep. Any
Entertain a
other?
motion to.
No, wait a minute, one quick.
Councilman?
On here, on the Evolution Park, he's got in here for $65,000 for sidewalks and that. Are we kind
There are
of,
sidewalks.
are we kind of foolish to do that kind of work where we're going to be trying to develop that area within a couple of years?
It's actually not as much work as it maybe looks like, but basically the front of the sidewalk there has curb cuts in the wrong places. So we need to realign the sidewalk and the curb cuts, and I think there would be. Yeah, so it's mostly the sidewalk and the curb cuts. So it's on the side where the park is. It's not on the side where the potential development's
Right, I
happening.
understand that, but the potential development is talking about what, 190 units?
It's going to be a big develop. He's talking about the 49 Snow Street.
Yeah, 49 South Street,
Big empty lot, yep.
156.
156
I forget, it's
units.
been a while, yeah.
So this is going to make a big impact in that area. And I
It-
don't like
it
to see
will.
us spending money, and all of a sudden the developer's going to say, well, I'm coming in and do over here anyway. We're just like throwing money away.
I don't think we could anticipate that they would do the sidewalks in front of an existing park, though. I mean, it could always be a request when a development happens that they fund some sidewalks, but because that whole parcel is going to get developed, I would hope that they would invest in the sidewalks directly around their parcel.
And my other question on this Appalachian Park, I thought the city took a stand that we weren't taking any more parks, and now we're taking parks?
This is owned by the Fitchburg
Right.
State University and maintained by Fitchburg State University.
Okay.
So we're doing a piece of the public way, the sidewalk,
All right.
and then propose to fund a small amount for an interactive sign for the park.
Okay, all right.
Councilor Zarella?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to note that, first of all, I know this is kind of a drum I've been banging lately, but in context of streets and sidewalks work, $65,000 is not a large expenditure. In fact, it's a very, very small expenditure. And it would be nice if someone's doing that scale of development to ask them, hey, can you do the city a favor while you've got your crews out here? But that's, as I understand it, at least a couple of years down the road before it comes to fruition. And in the meantime, we want the park to be accessible and usable and attractive to residents. So maybe there's another segment of sidewalk in that area that we could ask the developer to look at. Maybe, just out of the goodness of their heart. But I'm not sure that deferring this project for that long would be the right decision. I've been very pleased to see the development of that park as it's gone on. And if this is a little bit that we can do on our end to help it to be a success, without taking on the burden of another city park, then I think it's money well spent. So I will make a motion to approve this block of funding.
Second?
Motion made and seconded to approve the 5 projects as listed and as appropriated for public facilities and improvements. Any discussion on the motion? If there are no objections, I will take unanimous consent. to approve? This seeing none. Public facility improvements is passed as is, or favorably recommended. Next is public services. There are 9 recommendations totaling $143,400. I'll try to go through these quick. Street outreach, sponsored by the Fitchburg Department of Public Health for $15,000. Fitchburg Farmers Market, sponsored by the Growing Places, $7,500. Spartacus program, sponsored by the YMCA, $11,500. Drug Enforcement Patrol program, Fitchburg Police Department, $64,000. Family Homeless Shelter, North Star Family Services, $10,000. And lastly, Mayor's Energy Fund, Mayor's Office sponsorship, $5,000. Homelessness Prevention Project, sponsored by Community Legal Aid, $10,500. Access to Recovery, sponsored by Restoration Recovery, $4,900. And lastly, Transportation to Full Steam Ahead After School Program, Boys and Girls Club of Fitchburg and Leominster, $15,000. Councilors, because of, I would ask that discussions be limited to everything but item number N, the very last one. I have to recuse myself from that one as I have my family member who is employed by Boys and Girls Club. And even though it's for transportation, I'm playing it safe anyway. So if we could have a discussion or questions or comments on all projects except Project N.
Good.
Council Van Hazigan?
I'll start us off. So it looks like a lot of this, the majority of the money is just continuation of ongoing programs that we've been doing, that we funded them in the past and finding them mostly at a similar level in the future, in the coming year. So it seems like these have been working and they're good programs and good to continue.
Yes, there are 2 that are new that I'll point out. The Mayor's Office Energy Fund, $5,000, and then the Access Recovery, which is just shy of $5,000, $4,900. But for the most part, everything else is a continuation of the good work that these folks do.
Mm-hmm. So I imagine the Mayor's Energy Fund, that's a new program, and I think there's been some other sources of money that have gone into that recently. I remember seeing something.
Yeah.
Is that handled through the Mayor's office, the application process for that?
It is, yes. And we assisted them with creating an application that would meet the requirements, the income test, basically, for these funds, if they were to use them if this were to pass and they were to use them for residents in need of oil.
Mm-hmm. And if we approve this, these funds will still be available for the end of this heating season for anyone who's trouble, or is this really planning ahead for the next season?
It really is for the next season because this can't go into effect until July 1.
That's right.
Unfortunately. So we're really thinking about next year.
Okay, yeah. That's good because I'm sure oil will still be expensive next year.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much.
Councilor Zarella?
Thank you. First, just one thing on something that just caught my ear. You mentioned helping people pay for oil. Do the terms of the program, are they limited to oil heat, or can residents also receive assistance if they're on natural gas or other forms of heating?
That's a good question. My understanding was oil. That was the word that was used in conversation. But reading it, it actually does say utility assistance, so I think it could pay for gas, heat.
Okay.
I have to go back and look through the
When you get the chance, I certainly have no problem with this funding or the way it's worded on in our approval here. But for the program as a whole, would you mind just checking and seeing if this and the other sources of funding make all forms of heating utility payments eligible, or if it's restricted by type?
Right. Yeah. And I may be able to do that tonight.
Excellent. You don't need to do it tonight. You're going to be getting home late. Have a bite, rest. I don't need to know until whenever is convenient for you. But thank you. I do also want to say I'm pleased to see us continue funding the legal aid. Obviously, that's a subject that, I have a particular interest in, and having worked legal aid the year before law school, I can tell you how important these kinds of interventions are, particularly these kinds of targeted interventions, because it is much, much easier for a legal aid office to help people, or for an ordinary, for-profit law office too. It's a lot easier to help people if you can get in on the case at an early stage rather than coming in when everything's already falling apart. Because by that point, by the time everything's already falling apart, your odds of success are lower, the cost of actually taking the case is higher. So if they can look at, as it says, people who are potentially losing their subsidies before they lose them, rather than getting a call saying, hey, I lost my subsidy and now I'm getting evicted, that's going to be a big help. Even just this small amount, I had the chance to look at the budget, not the whole budget, but aspects of the budget for the program I was working with. Granted, this was about 15 years ago, but $10,000 is not small potatoes for them. People would be very surprised what these agencies manage to do on a shoestring. The only other two comments I had were, one, just a more general question that I meant to ask at the beginning. I noticed that unlike in previous years, we don't actually have the requested funding listed for each of these. It's not a huge issue for me, but I'm just curious why that wasn't included, where normally we get to see what each applicant requested and then what the mayor granted. Here we're just seeing what it was funded at last year versus what it's being recommended for this year.
We can add that back in.
That would be nice, just so that we know, so that if there is any...
I think if I recall, Counselor, I think last year or the year before that, it was the opposite. We had the requested and the current, but then not last year's. I know I was one of them who said, where's last year's? It'd be nice to see if they got a cut or they're new.
Right,
I think they did in responses, they added the funding
them
last year and took out the second column.
Yeah, it would be nice to have all
I don't know if it's a space
three.
constraint on the page or something, I don't know, but yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, it would, I mean, I never want to be one to just second guess the minutia and say, oh, well, they requested 65,000, we're only giving them 64,000. Why aren't we giving them that extra 5,000? But if there were a drastic discrepancy, I would at least want to be able to ask what the rationale was. And lastly, I'm very slightly disappointed, not enough to affect my vote, but slightly disappointed that we don't have a representative from the Restoration Recovery Center here, given that it's a new program that we're being asked to fund this year. It looks good. It looks like it checks out. I don't have a problem with it, but for a new program, it would have been nice to have someone show up to answer questions.
And I think that is a fault of my office, and with the staff being out because of a death, an unexpected out, I'm not sure that we reached out in the last couple of days to let folks know. I mean, everybody has the schedule, so they know what the schedule is, but for the new folks, we should have, especially this is their first time around, we should have reached out and said, hey.
No, honestly, that makes perfect sense. Thank you for reminding me. I wasn't thinking of that. Makes perfect sense. If they're new, they need the reminder, and if you're short, especially short your overseer of this budget, then it makes perfect sense that it didn't get done. I don't fault anyone for that then. Thank you for explaining, and again, you did mention that earlier. It just didn't click for me, so I apologize. I'm not looking to rake anyone over the coals. That makes perfect sense to me. Thank you. I have no problem with anything here. I'm in support.
Councilor Boschman?
Access to recovery, is that the one in Clegon on Fairmont Street?
Yes, it is. Yes.
And the other thing, to go back to what Anthony says, I really prefer to have the people in front of us, even if they came, if they were here for the last 10 years, I really prefer that. Because there might be questions from all of us, and it really, you feed off of one another. And there's nobody here, except for the chief.
I was surprised that, and I'm not saying this is because I was surprised no one's here.
Yeah,
Usually
me
we get
too.
a full complement. I can only think maybe because they went through the planning board and the mayor agreed with it, that they probably figured 2 rounds out of 3 were, and we've been here before. I agree with you guys. I agree with you. I think they should be here, but I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt because normally they are here.
Normally they are, and normally this meeting is happening a week later, so that may have played
The school
into it.
vacation week too, so.
Well, I
yeah.
think last year, didn't you guys change when finance met?
We did, so that's another good point.
I wasn't
actually.
expecting
We
it to be
typically
Tuesday and then
have-
Wednesday.
We would have normally had our meeting next week.
Yeah.
Because this was the week we had full council. But the schedule's changed, and it is school vacation week. I'm just trying to process and rationalize. That may be another reason why some people aren't here.
And the month started on
I
a
don't know.
Wednesday as well, so we have it back to back.
Yeah.
Well, that's because of
Our
Calvin
schedule's
Brooks.
different, and it falls on school vacation week, so maybe that's why. I don't
Well,
know.
I blame Calvin Brooks on this because he's the one he wants me to hurry up so he can get home.
We will do better next year to make sure that everybody is aware.
Maybe it'd be good for the committee to at least see at a minimum a letter go out,
Yeah.
that we're copied on, so we at least know they were notified, so, it's their choice at that point, so. You still the floor, yep.
And the other thing here on the homeless prevention project, I have no problem helping out as long as the legal aid realizes there's 2 sides to a story and they work together hand in hand with the landlord or the property owner, whatever one comes first. That it's just not one side, there's 2 sides to every story. And so I'll support them, I supported them before. And on the mayor's energy, I know it's only $5,000. I won't say too much about it this year, but maybe next year I will, because there's a lot of programs out there, a lot of programs where for heating, for helping out people. If you look at I look at the paper a lot, and you see it a lot for different programs. And I say, why are we duplicating things that's already out there?
And I totally get that. I think this fund is intended to meet the needs of those residents that are just slightly over income for fuel assistance, because that income limit is 60% of the area median income. This fund can assist folks that are up to 80% of the area median income. So that there's a window of benefit to folks that otherwise would not be able to access fuel assistance, which is the main source of these kind of heating funds.
Because I'll be quite frank with you, I got my electric light bill, and my gas bill, $1,000. You're talking about 5 people here, if you're lucky, 5. So this is not a lot of money. I understand
No, it's
that it's
not.
not a lot of money.
It's not, no.
I was just surprised. I'll probably support, I'm going to support this. There's no sense in me fighting, because I'm happy for the Recovery Center in Clegon getting some money. And the other thing is, but I didn't really do my homework this year, and I apologize. I didn't go to we can't talk about this, right, too. You told me not to talk about it. Number N.
Oh, yeah, can you wait on that?
Yeah, I
'Cause
can
yeah,
wait.
okay. All right, are you all set?
I'm all set, go ahead.
Council Zarella?
Thank you. I just wanted to briefly address the point about legal aid, because, like I said, I have some experience with those
You told
programs.
me 50 years ago.
Ha! 15, counselor. No, I just wanted to mention that in my experience, at least, now granted it wasn't Community Legal Aid, wasn't the organization I was working with, but it's my experience that wherever a landlord is not a complete scumbag trying to screw over tenant, pardon my language, trying to, deprive a tenant of their rights, wherever the landlord is reasonable and willing to work with the tenant and with legal aid, the legal aid will try to do so because it's always easier and more cost effective to come to an agreement with the landlord than to fight it in court. So I think they will try to take that into account. The only time they really want to bother going to court is if they can't work it out beforehand. So that is taken into account. They are very much tenant-sided. They're not going to be looking out for the landlord's legal rights because that's not their job. The landlord has a lawyer, presumably. But they do try to work with the landlords.
Okay. Make a motion, we accept.
Councilor Cruz?
Sorry,
Thank you,
Councilor.
Mr. Chair. I do want to point out we do have Chief Martineau later tonight. Chief Martineau, as always, is in attendance tonight, and for that reason, I hope I can ask you some questions about the overtime funds here. It's the Drug Enforcement Patrol Program for a little over $60,000 for overtime for the police department. Can we assume that because of the amounts of the money and the cost of overtime that this is predominantly for low-level possession charges in the CDBG area?
Well, first of all, the police department has been very fortunate to receive CDB funding for probably the last 15 to 20 years that we've been able to receive this funding, primarily to combat drug interdiction within the city. In the last couple of years, specifically this year, I've really tried to diversify CDB funding. I thought it was necessary not just to concentrate on narcotic investigations, and this year we really diversified our application where we're making a greater commitment to visible foot patrols downtown on Main Street, where a significant amount of CDBG funding will go towards that. In addition to that, we found areas of the rail trail that we can put uniformed police officers out there utilizing CDBG funding. Now, that doesn't mean that we still don't have a need for a very robust narcotic investigation unit. Those funds we will be taking from our general overtime budget. But out of the $60,000, now there were some extremely well done applicants in this section, and the mayor and the planning board did a great job trying to figure out how to allocate these funds. This year, we basically, it's a 50-50 split what we've used for foot patrols versus drug investigations. The drug investigations span from low level to mid to actually some high level investigations. The amount of time that goes into those investigations is significant, thus the need for some of the overtime funds. But initially this started a decade ago, that most of it was going towards narcotics. I really felt it was necessary to start utilizing federal funds on something that was much more visible, having a uniformed police officer walking on Main Street, a uniformed police officer on the rail trails, making those type of interactions. So we really tried to expand this program this year.
That's good to hear. So it's not, the focus isn't on making the arrest so much as preventing.
No, the focus is still on arrest. Make no mistake about it. We still have our work cut out for us here in the city, not just the city of Fitchburg, across the Commonwealth, across the nation. You know, there's a lot of people suffering horribly with substance use disorders, and it's my job to disrupt that and to identify and incarcerate those that are selling that poison on our streets. So I'm still extremely focused on that part of it, but it's a multi-pronged approach. You know, we have to have some where we're doing outreach and dealing with those that are suffering from substance use disorder, but there's still a significant need that we got to eliminate the drugs from our streets. So we try to do a balancing act on this. Because these are federal funds, I think it's necessary that we really diversify the application as we did this year.
Mm-hmm. That's encouraging to hear, because when I see $60,000 for maybe some overtime or enforcement or patrol, I think, well, would that be better suited for a salary of somebody who can be in the outreach department exclusively?
No, we rely significantly on overtime for our drug investigations. Our narcotic officers are assigned to the day shift. It's been presented in past CDBG fundings. Why didn't we switch their hours to 3 to 11 or 4 to midnight? If we did that, then we would be paying city overtime for them to go to court during the daytime. So it's in our best interest that our drug detectives work the day shift, but the majority of their investigations happen from 3 o'clock till midnight, thus the need for the overtime to conclude those investigations. But, you know, we've been very fortunate, you know, to have these funds available to us, because if I didn't have this CGBD opportunity, you would be seeing another $60,000 requested in my operating budget, because what we accomplish with these funds is extremely important. For instance, last year our drug detectives did 58 search warrants throughout the year. That's over a search warrant a week that we were conducting in the city. I should have brought the statistics, but an overwhelming amount of drugs were taking off the streets, including firearms and seizures of cars, and a whole wide range of stuff that we seized last year. So our narcotic officers are doing an exceptional job with the funds that they're being given through this.
It's pretty telling that we had a cruiser just fly by with their lights on.
I saw that.
You're out there. You need the money. It's just, I like to discuss the prevention and the outreach and how do we cut to the root of this problem, and I think you guys are doing a good
I
balance.
appreciate that. In my position, it has to be a dual approach. You have to eliminate the product in the city, but you also have to have compassion with those that are suffering from the effects of those drugs. And you really have to tackle it together. And when you can tackle it together, maybe you can make some headway. I'd love never to ever have to put an application in the CDBG for drug investigations. That would be the ultimate goal, but unfortunately we're not there. So we will continue to do a multifaceted approach to it. That's why you're seeing a little bit of a different application this year with a little diversity, with more, for lack of better terms, feel-good projects.
Okay. Thanks, Chief. Thanks for coming tonight.
And while I do have, I know you would like to see other applicants here. I'd like to just speak on behalf of Restoration Centers in Clegon. Our department works closely with them. I think that I was excited to see their application. I was excited to see that the mayor made a recommendation for funding. I know it's in your ward in Clegon. They do some fabulous work up there, along with homeless outreach. The city is really in a different place than we were 5 years ago on how we provide services that truly need it, the people that truly need it.
Council Van Haziger?
Just real quickly on the subject of attendees, I will remind the councilors that the planning board holds a special meeting just to hear these issues, where all the attendees come, they do presentations, and if we were curious about the applicants and then what they were intending to do, it's a great thing to go to, and you can see it will probably answer a lot of our questions, so we don't have to drag them out a second time and then a third time when it goes to the full council, because people do like to spend a little time with their families in the evening. But just in terms of packaging for next year, a couple things came up. What would be nice, too, is to just see the total applicants, to see what other projects were applied for and what, unfortunately, that there isn't money available for, just to get an idea of what the total need is and what we're able to do out of that. But that's for next year.
And I wasn't sure if everyone had gotten the initial full electronic application?
Yes, I did. I think,
I have it right here.
yeah.
With everybody, with every applicant?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
But we could do, because we do have a version of this summary that has all of the applicants.
And if you already sent it out, I must have missed it when I was doing my homework to get
Well,
ready for this
it's not in
meeting.
that summarized fashion.
Yeah.
It'd probably be
Right.
better if we had that summarized fashion, because the packet is long, so, yeah.
So, but we could send both. I didn't want to have all of the applicants that weren't funded in the same package because I thought it was going to be confusing.
And even if it's more of a summary, just sheet. And
Yeah, like the
it just-
spreadsheet.
Yeah, just something like that even. would be
I'll
fine.
give you the spreadsheet.
But that's for next year.
Thank you, Chief, for your input. Councilor Boschman?
One final question. The North Star, I think North Star we're talking about. For the residents of North Star, how many go to North Star down there? I understood the homeless shelter.
How many families can they serve? Is that what you're asking?
No. How many have they taken from Fitchburg? I know we've been going through hard times in Fitchburg because people have been selling houses, apartment houses, and they're evicting people.
Generally, it's been close to half. I don't know what it is right now, so I can only speak historically to what it has been.
Yeah.
We're only funding the work that can be done with Fitchburg residents. We're not funding work that is done with residents that come from other communities.
Okay. I just want to make sure, I just want to know if the numbers have changed, that's all. That's all I wanted to know. I mean.
That's a
from
good question.
Fitchburg residents.
Yeah. I think they can only house around 5 families in that building. So I don't know how quick the turnover is, but I can certainly find out what the current makeup is, what
Okay, that's
communities they
okay.
come from.
Thank you.
Counselor Zarella?
Thank you. Sorry, just trying to regain my train of thought. Right. I just wanted to note that I take the point of that Councillor Van Hazinga was making, but it can be difficult to attend meetings of other boards and committees because with the number of meetings that we're already scheduled for, sometimes those other nights are scheduled out for other things, family obligations and so forth. So I agree it would be nice if we didn't have to pull the representatives out again and again to answer questions, but practically speaking, I think once a year it might be inevitable if we want to get everyone the information that we need. But again, this year, that's been explained and I understand, and I don't hold it against any of the applicants. And I think that might have been it. I don't remember what my other comment was going to be.
Make a motion to approve this section with the exception of item N.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve all projects other than Section N, holding that out. If there are no objections, it's favorably recommended. I'd like to ask Councilor Zarella if he could just sit in the chair seat for Project N while I excuse
Thank you,
myself.
Chief. Thank you very much. Take care of yourself.
Good night, thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
All right. For the record, Chairman DiNatale has left the room. Project N is transportation to Full Steam Ahead after school program through the Boys and Girls Club of Fitchburg and Leominster in the amount of $15,000. It reads, program funds will be used to provide one-way transportation from Fitchburg schools to the Boys and Girls Club after school program located at 365 Lindell Street in Leominster. Approximately 105 youth will be served.
Motion to approve?
Second?
On the motion, quick question. How many students go up there now?
Counselor, wait a moment. Are you willing to withdraw your motion?
Sure.
All right. Go
Just
ahead,
one
Counselor.
quick question. How many students from Fitchburg now up there?
I can't answer that question. It looks like 105 youth will be served, and I would expect that's very similar to this year. So I don't think the number changes a lot from year to year. So they're with respect to Fitchburg residents, it's about 105.
All right. All right. I'd like to see it increase, but there's nothing I can do. All right. Go ahead.
Motion to approve.
Second?
I have a motion and second. If there is no objection, we'll take this by unanimous consent. Seeing none, it is approved 4-0. And I will now vacate the chair for Chairman DiNatale to return.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you for filling in, Counselor.
No problem.
All right, so now we're on to the section titled Economic Development. There are 5 recommendations totaling $160,000. Small Business Technical Assistance Program, New View Communities, $25,000. Main Street Studios, Fitchburg Cultural Alliance, $10,000. Sign and Facade Program, Community Development, $40,000. Fitchburg Downtown Coordinator, Fitchburg State University, $35,000. Fitchburg Public Market, Worcester Regional Food Hub, $50,000. And I know we have Mr. Ferguson here, who I believe is here for the Downtown Coordinator.
And I can also give some statements on the Fitchburg Public Market. Public Market.
Okay, so any questions for Mr. Ferguson? He's here for projects W and V. But I'll open it up to anyone who has questions for the section. Councilor Zarella?
I like everything I see. I don't really have any questions. I just want to take a moment. I know I do this every year, so I'll keep it very brief, but I just want to thank the administration for continuing to fund small business development because I am very keenly aware of how important that is and how critical the startup phase is. You can have the best business idea, the best employees, the best everything in the world, but if you don't get off the ground successfully, the business will fail. Once it gets going, a good business can become self-sustaining, but having that ability to provide that technical assistance and advice for people who may have a perfectly good ongoing business model but don't know things like how to set up a DBA or how to, set up a payroll account or something like that. Those kinds of things, you don't need to know how to do those things to cook food or to, sell goods. But you need to do those kind of things to run a restaurant or to run a store. And so having someone to provide that bridge is going to be, I think, very important to ongoing entrepreneurial efforts in the city. And since I know one of my colleagues will appreciate this, small businesses are usually very loyal to the community that gets them started. They're not big chains, they're not big corporations. They're going to stay here, they probably live here, they're going to spend their money here and hire from here because that's just what makes sense at the small business level. So again, I appreciate the city's continued commitment to that. And like I said, I like everything I see.
Councilor Cruz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Ferguson, did you say you were here for Fitchburg Public Market as well?
Correct. I can make a few statements on that and
Sure.
answer some questions on that. If I have a question I can't answer, I can assure you that I can get the answer within 36 hours.
This is Mr. Sean Rainford, right?
Correct.
Right. Yeah, we've talked quite a bit about this. I think it's wonderful. It's the first time it's been on our community development block grants.
Correct.
This is a terrific idea for Fitchburg, who's not familiar with the Worcester Food Market. It is a small business incubator for someone like Councilor Zarella mentioned, who can't afford the capital yet for their own business to be incubated in this food hub, and it creates a terrific culture, a terrific atmosphere. It's a wonderful thing to have in Worcester, and of all the things on here, the downtown coordinator is going to be great. I'm supporting of that. Sign facade. This public market is really something that could be special for Fitchburg, and I encourage my colleagues to, my colleague at the end, to not be discouraged by Worcester in the title. It's going to be Fitchburg, and it's going to be a great thing for Fitchburg. So I just want to give my support of that. And thank you for coming today. Appreciate it.
And I have prepared a statement on that if I can
Please.
read it, just for...
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.
Sure.
So the Fitchburg Public Market, designed as a business incubator, the project is a CDBG-eligible economic development activity intended to serve low-mod income limited clientele. The project intends to activate underutilized space in downtown Fitchburg by launching a food business incubator and a shared-use commercial kitchen based on the model that was developed in the city of Worcester through the Worcester Regional Food Hub, opening at Union Station. This endeavor works with individuals who want to open a legitimate food business by providing training for industry certifications and professional development, such as ServSafe Food Manager certification, and importantly, a shared use, fully licensed, and compliant commercial kitchen. Individuals who graduate the incubator program then move into brick and mortar or wholesale operations. For instance, not everybody with a food idea for business wants a brick and mortar restaurant or cafe. Some simply might want their unique hot sauce on a shelf, white labeled at Market Basket. So it's not just about brick and mortar, getting business into brick and mortar retail. It's also about people who have other ideas with food to derive income, meaningful income from that. Many folks in the community have already experienced some of the initial impacts of this endeavor, and I bet some of us in this room have as well. For instance, you may have purchased a meal or snacks from a Worcester Food Hub entrepreneur at last year's Civic Days block party, or at one of in-town's formerly Reimagined North of Maine's First Thursdays events. We had them pop up there a few times in front of River Styx to complement River Styx activity on Thursday evenings. Importantly, this proposed project is supported by the City of Fitchburg's 2018 Economic Development Strategic Plan, which specifically identified the need for more food businesses and eateries, not only in Fitchburg, but in our North Central region. And in closing, the City of Fitchburg, the university, and in town, the organization I run, are working collectively to support the advancement of the Fitchburg Public Market Business Incubator, as this project provides a pathway for individuals in our community to develop businesses and careers in the food industry while assisting Fitchburg achieve its long-term vision of a vibrant and functioning downtown economy. Thank you.
I yield the floor.
All set. Council motion?
This project that you're talking about, I don't know that much about it. I probably have to go to Worcester to see it. Where are they going to be located? They're going to be located down by Store 24, way down here on Main Street, right across the street from the Hopper Furniture?
Correct. That's the location we're focused on right now.
That's the location you're going to do, right?
That's what we're focused on right now. We're close to an agreement on that location, 35 Main Street.
Right. Because I thought they were supposed to do that a couple of years ago. I thought that project was supposed to be done a couple of years ago.
This is...
I'm talking, it is.
Yes, I thought so too.
Well,
But you have to separate the property owner from
Right, I was
the
gonna say-
Worcester Regional Food Hub. So
I don't mean to interject, Ms. Murphy, but I remember specifically because I talked to the owner a few months ago, actually. Wasn't there, I'm remembering correctly, there was a massive storm a year or two ago. A major flood took place down there.
yeah, the mud
And
flood.
it really damaged a lot of the inside of the building that he was working on. I think it was last year, it was a major rainstorm. A lot of flooding he had, a major flood in his building, which delayed him several months, maybe even a year. It destroyed a lot of stuff in there that he fixed up. So he was waiting on insurance. That was one explanation he provided me of why it's been a lot longer than he'd like. There was a storm that damaged his facility. I believe I recalled that correctly.
Yeah, no, you're correct. And you can kind of see if you look at the Fitchburg Plumbing Building across the street, there's this line.
Right.
On the sort of the lower part, that where the water came up to, you can actually see that.
I think if I
on the
recall, there
building
were
across the
videos
street.
all over Facebook of that storm. I think the water was 2 feet high in some locations down there.
It was just
So-
too much pavement, too much rain coming at once, and the storm drains couldn't handle it.
That was one major reason amongst a couple others, but that set him back quite a ways.
Now, my question to you, then, did we rectify the problem down there? I mean, he fixed his building, but we live in typically New England, and we do get heavy rainstorms. Did they rectify the problem? Because if you're going to start a business, and I'm going to go down there, and I start, and the month of July comes, and we get 4 inches of rain all of a sudden at one storm, and now I can't open up for months. So much for my business.
So I can't 100% answer that question for you, but I can tell you that there is some funding that was made available from, I believe, our Representative Kushmarek to look at that intersection and how to make improvements. So that funding just came out, and DPW and the Community Development Department will be working together with our consultants to address that. But the first step in that is to figure out exactly what can be done, what the potential is, and what kind of green solutions we could entertain in that process.
Question, how long are you anticipating this? You're anticipating $50,000 a year, every year?
Right now, we only intend to come to you this year for the startup year. And with our partnership and our connections with the Worcester Regional Food Hub and their connections with the Worcester Chamber, we are stacking up financing for years out. To be frankly honest, years out is going to require grant funding. We will not be coming back to CDBG. We're working with foundations and others, but this is for startup in year one of the operation.
Now, the other thing I'm going to say, so we'll save a lot of time, I am not going to support W. So you can put me down for W out.
We'll separate that out in a vote if you wish.
Okay.
Yep.
Make a motion to approve everything but W.
I actually have
My apologies.
If you don't mind,
Councilor
Cal.
Van Huizinga.
Just real quick, one of the recurring programs we have is the Sign a Facade program. I was just wondering if you could just give us a quick rundown of some of the past projects we've used this project.
Sure.
funding for.
So we actually hadn't had the Sign and Facade program up and running until last year, where we reinvigorated it. So we had taken, 5-6 years off. Have a lot more different businesses than we did 5 or 6 years ago. So we're working with the Boulder Art Gallery to replace their outdated sign and facade. We're working with Rise and Grind. We're working with, who's the other one? I have 4. Oh, FATV. We just assisted FATV. Now they're on Main Street, so they have that. And the current budget I have, there's another applicant that has sort of gotten quiet, so I'm not sure if they're proceeding. There are a few hoops that they have to jump through, so sometimes they don't want to wait the month to have Mass Historic look at their sign design and tell us if we can proceed. So we'll be able to fund 2 or 3 more with the funding that we have, and this funding is actually intended to take it beyond Main Street. Mm-hmm. We recognize that there are businesses outside of Main Street, and we need to pay attention to those businesses too. So this funding is an opportunity to help Water Street, to help Cleghorn, to help Electric Ave, to help other businesses outside of the downtown.
Great, thank you.
Motion to approve everything but W.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve all projects under economic development except W. Any discussion? If there are no objections, we favorably recommend projects Z, Y, X, and V. And now that leaves Fitchburg Downtown Coordinator.
Make a motion to approve item W.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the Fitchburg Downtown Coordinator component for $35,000. Any discussion on the motion? Council Boschman?
The reason why I'm voting against it, I figure that we have an economic developer, and I think that she can handle that job downtown and do that kind of work. And so we don't need to fund, I don't believe we should be able to have to fund $35,000 for Fitchburg State. So I'm voting no.
Okay, Council Zarella?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have an economic development director, but she's responsible for a lot of things other than just downtown, and it wouldn't necessarily be a productive use of her time, nor monetarily efficient use of her time, given her salary rate versus the rate of a downtown coordinator, I assume. To have her doing things like developing and implementing events to draw people to the downtown, that's not really what we have her for. This is focused specifically on downtown, and I also note the micro enterprise component, which for those who are unfamiliar, it's basically small businesses, people who want to do things like, and I'm just guessing at the details, but things like, food trucks, pop-up carts, things that aren't even big enough to qualify for small business status, but that still can be vital and revitalizing parts of the downtown community. So I think $35,000 is a relatively small price to pay to keep our downtown's revitalization moving forward. And I think that it wouldn't really be an efficient use of time and resources to task our economic development director with tackling that. I yield the floor.
Councilman Husgo?
Yes, Councilor Zarella is absolutely right. It's really a difference in roles, and to just put it very simply, the Economic Development Director's job is to bring businesses to downtown and Fitchburg as a whole. This downtown coordinator is really to bring people to downtown in support of businesses. So there's some overlap in the area in which they work, but they really have different goals and different tasks that they're trying to accomplish. So I do support this position.
So I recall many years ago when we had budgetary constraints, this was on the chopping block by the previous administration. I believe the downtown coordinator position at that time was only $10,000. It was fully covered by the CDBG program. It was Ellen DiGeronimo.
Yeah.
And it was removed for a variety of reasons. And what we're seeing now is, as it was stated earlier, the job is different with the Economic Development Director in that this person is specifically working collaboratively with In-Town Fitchburg and other organizations, specifically around event planning and activities. So our Economic Development Director is not involved with event planning. I know from talking to the Mayor's Chief of Staff, this position is also extremely influential and helpful with the Civic Days events. So there's the event aspect of downtown. All of the in-town Fitchburg events that we see on First Thursdays, and if you go on their Facebook page, you'll see scores of events happening in our city every month, more so in the spring, summer, and fall months coming up. And the downtown coordinator is very closely with that organization on all of those events. I think there could be a case to be made down the road if this is necessary, if in fact we were under more constraints as we were previously, but the fact that we are having more development down here, which is the Economic Development Director and the Mayor's jurisdiction, bringing the business down here, it will require the need for more event planning services and hopefully many more events to be held, which is why I've supported this. I also made a comment years ago when we brought this back that I was not going to support it if it was fully funded. One of the reasons why that previous position, the position was canceled, is because $10,000, it was literally a part-time effort at best. Not a lot was done, and it wasn't the person's fault. It's just there wasn't a real commitment on the city's part. Plus, there was no in-town Fitchburg. There was no Activate Mill Street. It was a different time. So when it was brought back, I insisted that Fitchburg State at least pay for half, and I believe they are. This salary is covered half by the university. I know some may want to see the university pay the whole amount, but they're covering half of it, which is what I wanted to see. But also, the need for this position is practically a full-time need, and because of what's going on, there is more of a need for it. I know for Riverfront Park, for example, there's a lot of plans for Riverfront Park. We heard all those plans previously with respect to the amphitheater that we want to put down there. Not we want to, it will be going in there. More community events, more concerts. I would even lump in Crocker Field into the downtown area, I would think. And because of the turf improvements that we just approved last night, the goal in the near future is more community events there. So the need for this coordinator position in collaboration with in-town and the city administration is more necessary than ever with all of the parts that are moving right now. So that's why I will continue to support this. But I did not intend to support this if we were paying the whole amount. I believe because Fitchburg State University, this is a Fitchburg State University employee, they cover half the cost because of the partnership. They don't own all of downtown development, but they're a big piece of it with the theater block and what have you. And because they don't pay taxes, this was kind of a compromise. So I'm in favor of it, but I understand the points made about it. But there's certainly, if you take the whole historical context into perspective, there is more of a need for this position now than at any other time in the last 20 years. So I want to see it continue at least for the next year or two. You know, by the end of 2025, a lot of things should be coming to fruition down here with the main pieces, Art Colony, theater block. I can only imagine when the theater block is done, much more activity down here with that. This needs to be online for at least another 2 or 3 years at a minimum to see what we can generate, and then we go from there, in my opinion. Councilor Zarella.
Yeah, I'd just like to second also the comment about the need. Like I was talking about with the other piece of the small business assistance and so forth, even with not quite so small businesses, we've got businesses coming into downtown. They need a strong first year. The worst thing that could happen to downtown would be for all this investment and all this business to come in and have no one show up. Then the business, not only does the business fail and we have another vacant building, but then we've got negative precedent. No one's going to want to come into that vacant building because, hey, these people invested all this money and it all went down the tubes because no one showed up. So if we can draw people to downtown to ensure good grand openings and good, a good first year and just consistent eyes on these new businesses, that's what we need to do to be supporting them so that they can be successful, so that they can then flip that around, and once they've become successful, they'll be the ones drawing people into Fitchburg. But first, we have to draw people to them. So I think this will be, it's all a holistic picture. This is one piece of the downtown puzzle. And right now, I really do feel, I've been bullish on downtown since I got on the council, but now more than ever, I really feel like if this is pieces of the puzzle, then we're down to, fitting in those last 5 plain blue pieces in the sky before we finish it, glue it, and frame it. We're almost there. We can't take our foot off the gas now. Mr. Chair, do we already have a motion?
We do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One in opposition. It passes 4-1. Next section is rehabilitation and preservation. 2 projects: critical home repair, Habitat for Humanity, $20,000, and Code Enforcement Board of Health, $96,000. These 2 items are recurring items each year in this section. Council Boschman.
Liz, you happen to know where they tackled last year Habitat for what
I
they
could
did?
I could get you I don't know the addresses off the top of my head.
Okay.
I believe they generally are working about 4 projects a year with the $20,000.
Okay.
But I can get you that information.
Now, my final question, because I'm going to vote to accept this, I totally agree on both of them, so I won't waste Kelvin's time. My final question is, how come with the high cost of lumber and everything else going up, skyrocket, this price hasn't really gone up that much? And it's a very helpful plan for a lot of people that they're not handy or don't have a lot of money.
So we are not necessarily the only funding source for their projects, and they use quite a bit of volunteer labor. The reason that they can do this work in such a cost-effective way is because of the model that they use, where they have a construction supervisor, and then when they can use volunteer labor instead of a contractor, they're able to do that, and it creates a very efficient program.
Okay, I make a motion, well, listen, again, make a motion we accept.
Second.
Unless Council Zarella has a question for Ms. Murphy.
I do have a brief
Can
question.
you withdraw, please?
I will.
Council Zarella?
I like them.
Thank you, Counselor. So I am fully in support of this. I just wanted to ask a few sort of confirmatory questions to make sure I've got everything straight in my head. So on the critical home repair, would I be correct in assuming that a lot of the issues they're working on are not like large construction issues anyway? It's, from what I'm reading here, critical life safety issues, code violations. I'm thinking maybe faulty wiring, rotted stairs, things like that.
Fixing roofs. I think they fix a lot of roofs. Certain things they have to bring in another contractor for, so if it's a wiring and plumbing, they can't always take on those projects with this amount of funding.
Sure.
But they definitely do a lot of roof repair. Yeah.
That makes sense, and I'm glad to see it too, because kinds of issues, not only are they critical and sometimes emergency issues, they're also the kind that usually can cause progressive problems and turn a $5,000 fix into a $30,000 fix and force someone to leave that home rather than putting in the $5,000 or whatever and having a perfectly good home that they're up to date on all their payments on. It's one of the things that I hate to see the most in terms of our homelessness and housing problems and so forth is when someone who has done everything right ends up falling through the cracks because one thing went wrong for them. So if this can alleviate that, that's a great use of our money. And also, am I correct in very hopefully noting that given our recent code change, our recent ordinance changes and so forth, this $96,000 in code enforcement should probably go farther this year than it ever has in the past?
I would hope so. Yes.
Excellent. I'm genuinely looking forward to it because I know this has been a large and often sort of underserved piece of our work in the city in the past, not due to any lack of effort, but due to lack of processes and funding. And I think this will just further the work that we did a few months ago legislatively to start to really clean up a ton of the blight and a ton of the basically scofflaws around the city, people who are harming their neighbors and their neighborhoods by not taking their obligation as homeowners seriously or as landlords. And again, I just want to emphasize for the public, if you're doing the things you should be doing, this doesn't affect you at all. If you're doing the best you can and some things just slipping because you're having problems. I know from having worked with our city departments, they'll work with you. We're not out to get people. This certainly isn't intended to be a revenue stream for the city, you know, issuing fines and so forth. We want to go after the people who are making a problem, not the people who are just trying to get by in the city. So I'm very much looking forward to this, and I yield the floor.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve both projects under rehab and preservation. There are no objections. It is approved. Demolition and clearance section, Project S, demolition, sponsored by Community Development for $84,253.54. Ms. Murphy, I guess the obvious question is, do we have any idea of what the $84,000 is, what property yet?
We don't.
Properties?
It would probably be a couple of property. Well, it depends on the size and the nature of the property. So we are working with other departments to put our list together of properties that may have been condemned, that are still sitting there vacant, properties of that nature. There is one other property on 3rd Street that the city, I think we accepted as a gift. We have some funding to demolish it. This might supplement that if we need a little bit more.
Do you have any idea right now about that property on the corner of Bemis and Intervale? That
Yes.
Former, I think it was a mechanic's shop.
173 Bemis, we own that property. The city
I know
owns
we
that.
own it. I mean,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of remediation that's got to go on. Isn't there like
So right
environmental
now,
things? Yeah.
it is being remediated. We've had extensive testing done. We're not quite finished with that process, but it does look like we'll be in the clear without needing to do a lot of ongoing DEP compliance payments.
Love to see
we
that
get it
building
clean.
gone. It's such an eyesore where it is.
Yeah. So one of the things that we've been doing is sort of holding on to this I mean, we want to get it cleaned up to the point that it can be cleaned up within our resources, but then hold on to it to see what happens when Amazon opens up, because that's right at the corner of Intervale and Bemis, and it could be that knocking that building down provides better access, provides better line of sights for that intersection, which we know is going to be a challenge. So, you know, that one could be one that we use this demolition money for if the stars align.
Okay.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Motion made and seconded to approve Project S. There are no objections. It's approved. Last item on the CDBG package is CDBG Administration, Community Development, $191,317. And again, this is a 15% cap?
20%
cap. Okay. And so this would pay for necessary administration of the programs. This also would cover the full salary. Does this cover the full salary of Ms. LeBlanc?
Yes, it covers the full salary of our CDBG administrator. It covers a portion of the salary of our senior projects manager, Amy, who's managing most of the parks projects that are funded with CDBG. It covers a portion of our program management fiscal agent, who does all the keeping track of all the funding, and a very small portion of my position. And the replacement of my old position, it would cover a small portion of that too. So it's one full-time person and then bits of other people. Altogether, it's around 2.5 to 3 FTEs.
Motion to approve?
I have motion made and seconded to approve the CDBG administration. There are no objections. It's approved.
Motion to adjourn, or motion to approve the full package as
I don't
discussed,
think we need to take that vote. We have it in the minutes that the whole package has been approved. There was one project that was 4-1. So I don't think we need to take a hold. I think that alone signifies that we passed it.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Motion made, second to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you.